everyone. Welcome to the Confluential Live. I'm Kyler Cheatham, your host today. Happy to be with you this morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you're joining us from today. The Confluential Live, we try to go live every single week. We've been a little bit off on that schedule, but basically, this is an informal conversation where we take what we're seeing in the marketplace with our actual clients to you to kind of talk about how to optimize your technology strategies and projects. So today we are really taking on a big topic here, and this talks about how to look at trending technology, get over the hype curve, and actually come to ROI. We've got a lot of noise right now going on in the marketplace, whether you're talking about quantum, blockchain, AI, BI, oh my, right? Like all of those are things that executives can get laser focused on, or board of directors can hear, and they think big ROI fast and don't really understand what technical limitations the business may have, or if the eco structure is not mature enough to handle these types of technologies, how you can be innovative but be cost effective at the same time. So we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like, the hype curve, and then ask Adam what him and his team are really seeing in the marketplaces for as far as these conversations. So before we really dive into the topic, as always, we can see wherever you drop your messages in the chat from today. We're live on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, all the platforms, right? So go ahead and drop where you're joining us from today. We love to hear about our global audience, just to kind of see what's going on there. And then we invite you to join the conversation. It's always better to have insights from not only ourselves, but our audience, because as we know, as technology professors, right? I interviewed a professor today. That's why I said that. But professionals, we know exchanging ideas is two heads is better than one, three heads is better than one. Really being able to have that dialogue is the point of this conversation. There's no right way to do things. It's just what's right for your organization, right? What's going to prove the ROI. So with that, Adam, I'll let you introduce yourself while our audience drops where they're joining from in the comments.
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. My name is Adam Cheatham. I'm the CEO of The Confluential. And before I jump into kind of some of these topics about how you make actual value from some of these terms that people like to make softer than they are,
Yeah.
I first want to congratulate Kyler this
Oh,
week. She had to have known this was coming.
no, I
Um,
didn't.
Kyler this week has been nominated and has received two separate awards. One for empowerment as women in tech are concerned, with her skill sets and ability to drive value in the technical industry, with her expertise and guidance, expert guidance for projects, especially with our River AI tool, and the way that she helped us really lead the charge on pulling that together. And a special shout out to also Avery Kane, our team member who helped build that. We're very proud of our women in technology, and congratulations to you on that, Kyler. And also congratulations on winning top 30 voices in fintech. That's pretty cool. If you got to be an expert in a particular technology, fintech's a pretty good one, considering we're all here to do business, and the financial technologies are out there. And that's not just a segment that is focused on women. That's a whole industry-wide voices in fintech. And Kyler winning that award for top 30 voices in it is pretty impressive. So congratulations on those things. We're certainly very proud of you for that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's certainly, as I said, it's very much a team award. I might be, the face at the front end, but it really is a testament to the great team members we have that are dedicated to our client success and making sure that we're telling the truth in the marketplace. And that's our, mission and biggest goal.
Right, and I think that as usual, an expert way of tying us back to our topic at hand. Kyler doesn't like when I take control of the
No, I
conversation
do.
and
I
tries to
don't
nuts.
mind
Um,
whatsoever.
And then the idea that I did it to highlight her and is probably doubly offensive to her. So, but want the audience to just understand how proud we are of her, because those are major achievements. Kyler's first awards. I sincerely doubt it will be her last, because I have quite a lot of confidence in her. But we're here to talk about hype and Kool-Aid and how it is we get through that with concrete things, right? I like the idea that those awards are tangible things.
Yeah.
They show real value. Yeah. They show that you've had a real impact. And that's what it is I want to talk about in this conversation today. How do you know you're driving real value and real impact? I've seen so many consultants. We're going to drive ROI. We're going to increase this. Organizational change man. This is my favorite one I've been thinking about this
Yeah.
lot. Organizational change management is going to make the whole difference. Like, okay, how? Why? Well, we're going to make sure people feel good about how they're doing this. They're going to feel pretty good when they stick it to you,
Yeah.
because they feel like you're screwing them, right?
Yeah.
That feels pretty good to stick it to somebody. Is that the kind of change management you want? No.
Revenge. Vengeance.
Right. Revenge management. Organizational revenge management, ORM.
I'm writing that down.
For me, I think that what we want to focus on is, how do you know that you're gaining something? And to know the answer to that question, you have to know what it is you seek to gain, right? And in doing that and cutting through the hype, that's how you do this. I've had lots of CFOs look me dead in the face and say, I don't expect this ERP program to have a return on investment at all. I expect it to be a cost. And that just is what it is. And do I like the fact that I'm talking to you about that? No, but I can't survive as a business. And then I still turn the conversation into, how do you know you can't survive? You're surviving as a business today.
Yes,
You're not
exactly.
doing this now. You don't have a modern ERP now, and you're surviving just fine. I mean, look at your last quarter. You had dynamite results. Like, well, we can't sustain this into the future. I bet you could sustain it for a lot longer than you think, but there's a lot of hype and a lot of Kool-Aid around the I need something new that's driven by people who want you to spend money on something that you got to remember becomes the beating heart of your organization. And I mean that not just from a perspective of how it runs your back office, but because you can't rip it out anymore.
Yeah.
Right? You're stuck with the subscription fee for as long as humanly possible. And I've had many clients come to me to talk about how it is they're disappointed in the fact that they can't get out of their ERP because they've outgrown it. And now what do? They're paying these subscriptions. They'll continue to pay those subscriptions as long as they have even the teeniest, tiniest bit of it. And all technologies are designed this way from a subscription perspective. And for me, it's not as much about incurring the costs as it is about just making sure that you gain the value from it that you expect to. And that's the key important part of it that I want to dig into today.
Well, I feel like we could be done like after that statement. That was so profound in so many different ways, because one, right? We have an interesting position in the industry where we don't sell technology. So sometimes when we come in to a client project to advise, we do not recommend new technology, right? We recommend doing a lot of different things instead of replacing your technology. So many times you don't need new technology in order to be successful. And then the talk about, ripping something out. I was talking to an SAP client yesterday that was so upset with SAP, so upset with Rise, so upset with the experience, but ripping out an ECC, environment, that's kind of crazy. I'm here for crazy. I'm not saying don't do it in any way, shape, or form. I'm just saying you got to know that is a little bit crazy. So we have to think about those types of things. And then looking at, if your new technology is just a cost center for you, if you're still seeing your IT team as just a cost center for you, that mindset is not shifting them into where they need to be in the modern IT department. And that is value. And
Yeah.
that's what we need to talk about in looking at these different things. So in digging into that, let's kind of get into some of these audience questions here. Thank you for these amazing questions. They are definitely a great way to just start the process. I have a very high maintenance puppy in this room right now. So, just so you're aware, you're going to see some cameos from um, our dogs in this conversation. So, for these, what let's do this one. What's your go-to framework for defining tech ROI up front? So even like in the beginning of your conversation with those CFOs, how are you looking at how do you know if this is actually going to make us money or just be something that's on the hype curve that's right now is getting a lot of buzz in the marketplace? Our board wants it, our executive team wants it, but do we actually need it? And will it produce value?
Yeah, so from a framework for defining tech ROI up front, I always first start with where are we at right now? Yeah. What are we doing? My favorite example of all time is the green screen customer who needs advanced business intelligence because it takes IT a week to get a report out to them to change a field or column
Mhm.
or whatever. That's yeah, taking a week to do that. That's absurd. But the idea that you're out shopping for advanced business intelligence, if your idea of what advanced business intelligence is drag and drop dashboards, that's not advanced BI. That's
Mhm.
basic functionality that every modern business intelligence tool
Yeah.
has, not advanced. So let's have realistic expectations on what we need, where we're at today, and where we seek to go. And so, from a framework perspective, I like the idea of first identifying what problems we seek to fix, right? And then identifying the impact of those problems on the business, right? I have a problem. It takes me a week to get a simple report from my IT department. Okay, that's a good problem statement. What is it that we actually want to do? I want to be able to request a new report and have it delivered to me within 24 hours, whatever that is. Okay, cool. Now we're working with something, right? I have a problem, what it is I expect from a solution. Now I can actually chase an answer, and then I can kind of look at what a change impact assessment actually
Mhm.
is. Those words change impact assessment to me are the key components in being able to answer where is my tech ROI, right? Where is this going to make my life harder? Where is this going to make my life better? And how is it going to lead me to be able to do more, do more things as a business? And being able to have reports more quickly is valuable only if those reports give you more timely information, right?
Mhm.
If it's this is an end of quarter thing, I need to be able to run my end of quarter in 3 days instead of four. That's a whole lot less value than I need to be able to understand what new products I'm launching, their impact in the marketplace, and I need to know that within the first couple of like I need to know when those changes happen in days. That's a whole lot different, right? This isn't a back office function. This is a revenue generating thing that is much more important in our ability to make decisions quickly and enabling somebody in, say, for example, the sales department to save days in their ability to react is way different than just getting a job done more quickly because that reaction has a much cleaner tie to the values that you bring to the marketplace, and that's what you should focus on, right? I'm not here to belittle the idea that saving finances time is,
Mhm.
is not valuable. Finance is often one of the main decision makers in the purchase of new software, and helping them make decisions more quickly, whether it's about how quickly we can close the books or whatever that might be, is useful. But when we talk about solving the problem statement, which is it takes me a week to get a report with one new column in it. Why? Why is a week a bad thing? Right? Well,
Mhm.
it might not be that bad. And if you put things into perspective that way, you can start thinking about which projects you do first and which
Mhm.
time on. And that's really the challenge in that, especially when you start thinking about, I'm talking to a client right now. How do you know what projects you should be working on next and
Mhm.
why?
Yeah, prioritize
Right?
is so, so critical. And actually, interesting story. The Adam and I met at work, right? And he managed the priority list, right, for all of the IT projects. And I, even when we were just colleagues, I remember absolutely like despising him because my project that I wanted was not, on the priority list for, this Fortune 100 organization that we were, working for. And so that piece is so critical to understand from an organizational standpoint. What are you going to do next and why? But talk about when the hype curve turns that priority list upside down, right? So say the scenario, an executive member went to CES. Sorry, the puppy's attacking me. So went to CES, and then all of a sudden they see, this new booth with this new, BI facial recognition type of, this is how we make sure that our supply chain is most agile type of thing. And they come in and kind of blow up this priority list saying, we need to do this now in order to be competitive. What do you do as an IT director or as a project manager to say, okay, hear you, sir, but this is insane. So we're not
Man.
going to do that. Right. Yeah. So how do you handle that? Because I feel like that happens so often, especially right now.
Um, so there's always the caveat that's worth bringing in is that if the CEO of your company says that you need to go in this direction, you need to do it. You need to do it now. Um, if you don't trust the leadership of your CEO well enough to simply say, I should do that because he or she obviously has a plan in a direction that maybe I don't know all the details of. That's a different type of problem. So, well,
Mhm.
what I would suggest that we start to think about in that is you become a part of the advisory conversation, right? Okay, I hear you say you want facial recognition in our stores. You want to know this and that. You want to know all the people that are coming into your stores and how often they're coming there for some type of trade tracking,
Mhm.
whatever. That sounds weird to me. But start thinking about what can we gain from these things? What's the business value behind that? Knowing that somebody comes to our store every Tuesday and buys a 12 pack of beer is going to be actually useful information. Knowing that so and so comes to our store and starting to get to learn them by name, start to understand their buying habits, consumer behaviors, can help you start to figure things out. You can start not just doing facial recognition on individuals, you can start looking at overall trends. This is why the beer and the diapers are so close together because this study has been done without facial recognition. And people tend to go get diapers and they tend to come get beer. And you know what? They're at the furthest corner of the store. Why? So that you can walk past every other stinking thing in that store to try to entice you to buy a bag of chocolates as well and whatever else it is you might need or possibly think of impulsively to get to the diapers and the beer to get home to the things that you actually need to accomplish, right? So these types of things, think about the business value behind it
Mhm.
and then clearly articulate the cost, right? If we know these things about our customers, we can realistically expect to improve our buying behaviors, our consumers' buying behavior at X%. That improvement compounded over time, over the next 5 years, is going to make us $1 million. Cool. Awesome. That sounds pretty
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
This facial recognition software that you think is so stinking cool is going to cost us $1 million a year.
Mhm.
And it's going to cost us $1 million to get it up and running. So to gain that $1 million, we'll have to spend six. Okay, that's different, right? Now we're talking about changing the conversation on
Mhm.
hype. and tying it to business value.
Mhm.
Or you say, actually, your eyes might be open. We're gonna if that simple change compounds and opens up other doors for being able to have other studies in buying behavior. We're not just going to increase our beer sales, we're going to also increase our chocolate sales, our flower sales, and every other our children's toys and whatever uh, we sell in the store. I'm thinking of a Walgreens in my head and just
Yeah, I know. I'm, like, going
I
through the
don't know
aisle of,
exactly
like,
why
yeah.
this scenario has come up for me today, but I
Maybe it's, like, PTSD. We don't buy diapers anymore, thank God, but, like, sometimes
dog.
yeah, right, right. Oh my gosh. Yeah, but I mean, that understanding is
Mhm.
so critical, and then also really having that breakdown of the cost instead of getting, super emotional about it and being like, the CEO is trying to completely destroy my priority list, blah blah blah. Just sit down, be objective. You can't argue with data because maybe the CEO is going to be like, yeah, let's spend that 6 million, and then you have a lot of other things to consider, right? Is that the right organization for you? Do you feel secure there? And ultimately, that is your choice whether to work there or not. But hopefully, you're able to, you can't argue with data. This is how much it's going to cost. This is the benefit. It's the cost benefit analysis. We see it all the time.
Yep. Well, and that CEO has gotten your company to where it is today,
Yeah.
right? Whether they've been there for a long time or a short time, right? They have a job to do just as you do, right? So in this scenario, there are so many ways of thinking about this that can create value. And then your goal at that point, whether you're the IT guy that's responsible for doing this, the finance guy that's responsible for making sure that we get the money out of it and minimize the spend, that there are too many times where the thought process is we're going to gain and we don't think about how much. Um, there will be scenarios. My favorite scenario in all of this is still the Jeff Bezos scenario where somebody that like his Amazon people produce just the most immaculate assessment of what Amazon Prime was going to do to his company and how it was going to just drag it to its knees and bankrupt all of them to
Mhm.
be able to take on that cost. And he is a great example of leadership saying your data can only get you so far, and sometimes you have to trust your gut and your instinct. And he went for it anyway, and the rest is history, right? The man is, one of the world's leading winners right now, and experiencing one of the world's best lives right now,
Yeah.
because
I
he's
mean, it
made
depends on who
he's
you ask,
made
but
such
yes.
great. Well, yeah,
Yep.
well, if I had a yacht.
I think as a couple, I would guess,
Who has
right?
a yacht to get to his yacht?
Yeah, right.
And
Exactly.
I'm sure a boat that has the helicopter pad on it to be able to go
Yeah,
from
a
yacht.
super we call those mega yachts. I only know that because one of my first clients was Porsche, and we had to go to Nantucket to do race week, and the yachts were so big at, race week, and that's, like, racing, like, sailboats and things like that, that you would have this little speedboats, a couple of them that would go around and tell other yachts to move so that this big mega yacht could come in because they can't dock in shore. It's like a cruise ship. It's wild. But yes, Jeff Bezos is doing very well, right? But again, he trusted his business instincts, and a lot of times we don't see the full picture that leadership sees, and we have to have that empathy up towards that level of understanding when you are in that leadership position. There's other considerations outside of just technology projects that you need to consider. Maybe you're thinking about closing, your brick and mortar stores. Maybe that's a very big consideration for you right now. And you feel like this analysis and this technology could save 6,000 jobs. And that's a critical component to you. There's other things outside that executive might see. So,
Either way, as we start to think about coming back to the conversation about hype and
mhm,
Kool-Aid and all of that jazz, at the end of the day, the hype is sometimes something is going to feel like it carries the day, and the only way to drag it down to surface level is to make sure that you're looking at all of the
mhm,
key measurable things. If you can't measure it, I promise you, it is going to be nearly impossible to gain it, right?
Mhm.
If you get like, we're gonna be able to soar so high, what what does that even mean, right? Like, it's when you start using analogies to talk about how many gains you're gonna make in business, about how this is gonna turn into the next best thing, it's gonna be our most important invention since sliced bread. We're inventing a better mousetrap. All of that means absolutely nothing unless you pay attention to it, and then it becomes a distraction, right? Use
Mhm.
numbers, use math, right? This is where we
Mhm.
want to get into the how much does it cost and how much will we gain? Where are we going to experience our returns, right? When I get my new report, I am going to be able to respond to the marketplace more quickly, so that turning around a product in mid-flight can become a scenario where I can start targeting people in the middle of their buying decisions now,
Mhm.
as opposed to a week after they've made that buying decision and the opportunity is lost, which means that our revenue can increase by 25%
Mhm.
in this segment. That's awesome. Now I have a number. I can say our revenue is X times 25%, our increase is Y, and now I know what it's going to cost. And I may still turn around and say to you, Mr. Executive, then we're going to prioritize your report and we're going to get it done in a day. It's going to become our most important thing. How does that work for you? Okay, sure. Now I don't need an advanced BI tool and I can get my answer, right? I
Mhm.
don't need some fluffy new software if I can actually make an articulate argument for why I need something quickly, and then start to create a solution around it. Maybe the answer is you do need advanced BI. I'm not here to say that you don't. Maybe the answer is that you do need an AI tool. There are some amazing things that can be done rather quickly with AI, right?
Mhm.
In the span of a week, you can have a program up and running that beats Snowflake and tells you all of the key things that you need to know about your business, how it is they're going to impact your business, and those types of things. You can ask it, and then you can draw your own conclusions on where your concrete metrics come from, and you can start measuring things. That's the difference. We're going to go far. How far?
Mhm.
We're going to go fast. How fast? Those things need numbers, because numbers are the only thing that standardizes one thing compared to another in a clear and articulate way that says I should do this instead of that.
Absolutely. And that's well said. And it goes into some of these questions here on the side. And just a note on the questions, thank you so much for dropping these in. We will get to all of these. You always have my commitment to go back in. And then a lot of times we'll bring them to the next live as well. And we tag Adam in the answers too, as well. So let's go to this one. Let's see, not that one. This one. This is I like this question a lot. If you could add one mandatory checkpoint to every tech buying decision, what would it be?
At the very end, right before you sign the paperwork and cut the check, right? There are so many times where you go through all of this and you forget why you're doing it, right? You start to forget what the purpose was, and you lose sight of the gains that you expected from it, and you don't consider all of the information that you've gotten over the past 3, 6, 12 months in this decision to make. I'm going to buy this software. I'm going to spend this amount of money. What you thought you were going to get at the beginning is different than what it is you realize you will get at the end.
Mhm.
Ask that question. Are we still going to get enough out of this? It's fine that it's changed. Things over time are going to create change. That's part of what happens with time. Time changes, right? So at the very end, go back and say, is it there? Is the value there? In comparison to what it is we sought to do, in comparison to what we still think we can do. You might find that your reason for doing this is different. Even we're going to gain X dollars in this space, and that's 100% different than where it is you started out. You might find out just that difference in where it is this moves money from this set of objectives to that set of objectives is not acceptable to your leadership,
Mhm.
right? If it turns into a, well, we are going to do this project, we're going to implement this new AI tool, we're going to hire this expensive consultant so that they can teach us how to maximize our sales, and be more responsive to individual market changes on the turn of a dime in the span of hours instead of weeks. And now we're talking, we went from this concept of a CRM that's going to revolutionize the way we sell our products in our markets. And now we're talking about, well, with CRM, we need to do this, we need to do this. And now we're actually, that isn't going to be what we're going to gain from this. We're going to gain these back office functions. We're going to gain our ability to improve production rates at X percent. Those are all great and wonderful things, but
Mhm.
what if improving production rates and throughput rates is something that you do pretty darn well without new software, without new tools? And it's something that, frankly, it is so much a competitive advantage in your marketplace. It's the entire reason
Mm.
you need to be more responsive to that change in consumer behavior on the sales side. All of a sudden, improving your throughput and your production efficiencies means nothing, because if you could produce 10 times in less
Yeah.
time, of widgets in less time. But if you can't sell them, now you're just creating a financial problem, because you got to put those widgets somewhere. Now you got to buy more warehouse space to support the software decision that you made to increase your throughput, because you forgot your focus was supposed to be on increasing sales to get
Yeah.
rid of all of these widgets in the first place, right?
Yeah.
Revisit those things.
Yeah.
Look at it. Now
Yeah.
you know the costs. Now you know the gains. Put them up against where it is you want them to come from. And then before you sign the paperwork, make sure you're ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that project why should be the statement that starts every single status, just because people forget it, and it's it really is the beacon and the compass of where you're going in technology. Because there's so much going on, it's easy to forget why are we doing this. But you open every status with it, you post it on the break room wall. You just are. It's a constant reminder of that alignment for the project goals. So that's a great piece to remember. I would say at every checkpoint buying decision, I would have some sort of stop to think who's in this with me and what are my expectations around them. So what is my expectations for my vendor? What is my expectation for my consultant? What is my expectation for my SI? And have I told them those expectations, or is that just an assumption of what I think that they do in the marketplace? So that piece is, we see so much misunderstanding on that level, because we don't work with system integrators every single day in the business, right? We don't understand what they do. We don't understand what vendors support. We don't understand what they're supposed to be doing. So that's one thing that if everyone just stop and say, okay, this is my job, this is my role, and it was clear. And that's a lot of times what we come in to do in projects that are in trouble, that we have to triage and heal that relationship, not because anyone had any nefarious intentions, but because there was so much misunderstanding over the roles in the project. And that's what's struggling. So that's a great question. Thank you for that question. Let's see. This is a good one. How should leaders think about aligning technology investments with their long-term business strategy?
As integrated,
Yeah.
right? These two things are now connected. And let's face it, I mean, it the way I think about this, and I've recently finished a book called Sapiens. It kind of goes through the history of humankind and how it is we developed from hunter gatherers into these different levels of technology advancement. And it considers things like the domestication of wheat as a technology advancement. That actually was a
Yeah.
technology.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
it's not technology like it doesn't run electronically, but the idea that a wheel did
Mhm.
something was also a technology advancement, right? So investments in in business from a long-term strategy perspective can have a whole bunch of different definitions as it pertains to technology, but they should always be thought of as enabling platforms, right? How does this technology help me accomplish my long-term business goals, right? Um, and how will I know when that happens? That's just as important, I think. How will I know? There are lots of different technologies that you can buy. You could go buy a virtual reality headset and say this
Mhm.
is going to change the way that we do business. How cool is this virtual reality headset? You're laughing at me because I did this.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have my own personal reasons. I need to break it out again. I got to get back into it because I think that there's hopefully more advancements in it. But at the end of the day, I how is this going to actually influence my achievement of long-term business strategy? And just as important, what other strategies am I going to have to forego to be able to focus on this? Yeah. If I have, there can only be five in your top five, right? So what gets booted? What's on the bubble that doesn't
Mhm.
make it in? Because now you got to pay for this technology thing that's going to change your resource allocations. If
Mhm.
your technology thing might be number one, and two, three, four, five, might be great, wonderful things. But if you boot number one, does that make more space for something that would two, three, four, five now be a totally different set of priorities because you have $1 million, you're going to spend $900,000 of it on technology, and then split the remaining $100,000 between four activities that now have smaller impacts, or does it make more sense to you to spend $200,000 on five different things? All of a sudden,
Mhm.
change your whole top five. We can change all of your long-term business objectives. And so think about technology investments as not just for the gains that they create, but for the opportunity costs
Mhm.
that they have as well, because that's important too.
Absolutely. And I think, just taking a step back, if they're not aligned with your long term business strategies, that is a huge problem. So think through that, right? We see many sort of siloed technology projects, and that is a number one red flag that this project is going to have an issue because it's not sponsored by the business. The business should be driving that. They are the end users, and that, just in general is a great question because that can become a very, very significant problem. But that's a great question. Let's see, getting into some of these other ones here. If you see one you like, Adam, just let me know. Uh,
I won't take control of the conversation any more than I already did earlier, but I
okay.
will say that there is more to this conversation as well on sustaining technology, right?
Yeah.
You can build technology, and if you don't sustain it, it will wither and die, right? The same way we have an interstate infrastructure system, yeah? We built it once, then it has to be maintained, right? To the chagrin of many people in many metropolitan areas, roadways are always under construction, whether it's because now they need to grow, now they need to be repaired. You, of course, have the scenarios in Colorado, for example, where you have rock falls that wipe out an entire roadway and that needs to be cleared. Like, there is a maintenance that's required to this. And I'm not talking about just the maintenance that's included in your subscription fees. I'm talking
Hmm.
about the maintenance that is somebody on your team needs to be responsible for the phone calls that come in. And somebody says, I can't get my dashboard to work. Have you tried turning it on? That's a great idea. Or I can't log in. Have you tried resetting your password? That's a great idea. These are I'm a little bit tongue in cheek about these things, but there are actually more serious challenges that users will have that are things that you had to have someone on staff to fix.
Hmm.
It just is that way. So it's not just about the short term. I need to buy something now, but also the long term. What is it going to take to keep it?
Yes, absolutely. And that's something that's not often considered, especially in the hype curve. when we are talking about things like microservices or modular based ERPs or things like that, where, it's a best of breed, highly integrated solution, all of that sounds super cool, right? Because I can build my a la carte ERP system. Yes, you can. You absolutely can do that. But when it looks at who's going to maintain those integrations, because they're not just set in stone, right? Who's going to maintain that through all of the different pieces that you need to utilize to continue to get that good data? And that's a lot of times, especially if we're talking to an SMB or someone with a lean IT team, that's often not a good solution for you because it's not super standardized. So that's, kind of example of where we see someone be like, all right, this is less expensive. This is exactly what I need it to be. I don't have to pay for extra features. But then we look at it from a maintenance standpoint. What's it going to cost you? What
Yeah.
amount of time and resources do you need? And that can really blow up the budget right there that they're looking at. So
Yeah. So
definitely.
it always has to be within context, and it always has to be an up-to-date, accurate view of things too. And that's why I like that checkpoint question so much. And maybe I'm going back to it too many times, but um, you're going before you between the time where you decide you're going to check out this idea and when you're going to actually sign up for it. The whole purpose of not just signing up for it right away day one is to make sure that you're doing your research on making a good decision for
Mhm.
it, right?
Yeah.
The integration platform as a service is one of those things that nobody remembers until they see the cost, and
Yeah.
it can be too late, right? You can sign a contract with NetSuite and then find out that you need Celigo, and then find out that Celigo costs as much as NetSuite, and now you doubled the cost of your ERP because you didn't do your due diligence. You jumped into a contract too fast with one of the most sophisticated selling engines on the face of the planet, to buy NetSuite so that you could then implement an ERP to emphasize the data that you're getting from your e-commerce platform, and then you find out that
Mhm.
they don't connect. Now I had to have Sligo. Now I am pot committed to spending more money than I
Mhm.
can afford. And all of my gains that were going to be, I'm going to spend $1 million a year on NetSuite, which is going to allow me to improve my sales on our e-commerce platform, on our website, and all that jazz by $500,000 a year. Now I got to spend $1 million on Celigo, and now I'm losing $500,000 a year, and I got to catch up.
Yes,
Does that
absolutely. And that happens all the time. We again, as I always say, the software industry is one of the only industries that have a business model around lying and fooling customers, right? The only other industry that I can think of that has that same sort of mentality is organized crime, right? And so that's something, whether it's the cartel or anything like that, when it comes to these types of things. And when you're a NetSuite user, a lot of times you don't have that additional budget. Like you quite literally don't have, that additional money because you're an SMB and this was
yeah,
the top tier that solution because NetSuite's going to be one of the most expensive solutions you can choose as an SMB. Great solution, not at all dogging
yeah,
on NetSuite. It's a great solution when it's the right fit. But if you don't understand that total cost of ownership and what goes into those integrations, that can be incredibly expensive.
yep,
Um, so let's do this last question from Mick here on LinkedIn to kind of round out our conversation because I do think this happens a lot. How do you create a culture where teams feel empowered to challenge hype instead of defaulting to what competitors are doing? So it's kind of a two-part question. How do you create a culture where people can speak up, like you just said, and say, cool, awesome, great idea. Facial recognition sounds super cool, but we're going to have to remove, our procurement AI project in order to do that. So just understand that. And then also, a lot of times, especially in our industry, selling on what competitors are quote unquote doing, which often is a myth. You have no idea what your competitors are doing or how we stay competitive. That's when we can make mistakes and get in this, hype frenzy and chaos of we have to do this right now to stay competitive, but we didn't think through the strategy, the cost, as you just mentioned. So give us some insight into that.
So, from a perspective of creating a culture where teams feel empowered to challenge hype, that's something that comes from the top, right? If you are a distracted shiny objects executive, you're going to run a distracted shiny objects team. So, your leadership in creating that culture should create a culture of expectation, which is, yeah, bring me all the great ideas, all of them. I want to have all of the good ideas, but don't just bring them to me because they're neat. Bring them to me with some type of have an expectation that when you bring them to me, I want to know why, and I don't
Mhm.
want the answer to be because this is so cool or because Kim Kardashian is doing it, and so we should, or this that, and the other. I could care less
I
what
appreciate
somebody
that
else.
you don't even know how to say Kardashian. I'm
Well, I don't
surprised
need to, right?
you
So
knew
that's
one of their first names. That
drama
shocks me.
is for entertainment. That is a business designed to
Mhm.
create entertainment, right? I'm not here for entertainment. I'm here to make money as a business and grow so that I can use that money to have a positive influence on my family and my community, right? So, challenge the hype. Bring me the cool, neat, shiny things and let's talk about how they fit. When you do that, I will empower you to do fun and exciting things. I will also expect you to understand when the answer is that's not for us right now and this is why, right? Help your teams understand why their hype project isn't going to work or isn't going to be the number one thing here but might be later. you know go through those exercises. When it comes to defaulting what competitors are doing, you should never default to what your
Yeah.
competitors are doing. That's a totally different business problem. If you're defaulting to what your competitors are doing, you are in a race to the bottom on price at that point. And nobody wants to be based in a business that just makes their money because they're the cheapest thing out there. Because then what you do is you end up making hamburgers that have fake engineered ingredients because they're less expensive, and then somebody else finds a lesser expensive fake ingredient. So now all of a sudden you got to find different fake ingredients that are less expensive to race to the bottom on price, and you're not going to make any money, right? If you're focused on what your competitors are doing, whether it's AI or this, that, or the other, there's a hype in that too, right?
Mhm. Oh,
There's a
yeah.
good chance your competitors want you to think they're doing
Yeah.
something.
Ooh,
They're just
ooh.
totally different. So don't focus on what your competitors are doing. Focus on what it is makes you effective, right? One
Mhm.
of my favorite conversations is always to ask customers, what is your competitive advantage in the marketplace? And I have a colleague that we laugh about this. Like, well, people are going to buy them from us because we are X. It's like nobody cares what your brand name is if you can't deliver high quality on time every time. Your brand name means nothing sometimes. There are brands, Coca-Cola, for example, a brand name that means something. Coca-Cola tastes different everywhere in the world, right? Because it's locally sourced from local ingredients and they all taste different. But for whatever reason, Coca-Cola, the brand is important, right? It's not all brands are important. Know what your competitive advantage is, why people choose your products, and make decisions based on that. Don't focus on what your competitors are doing because they
Mhm.
might have it wrong anyway. You know,
Yeah,
there are
absolutely.
competitors of yours that are making bad decisions. Don't mimic those.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep. Absolutely. And I think that really is, kind of a good closer to this conversation, to be able to understand that the best technology strategy is the one that is grounded in data from your organization, right? Not that somebody else gave you, not that your neighbor is doing or your mom is doing, or that, so and so's executive said was the biggest new thing. Those are grounded in actual strategy. Innovation is actually much less shiny and sexy than a lot of times it gets branded as. It comes from hard work, resiliency as an organization, and a culture that is supportive so that your people want to bring that type of strategic thinking to the table.
Well,
Any quote? Go ahead. I was going to say,
you're asking closing remarks. I think
yes.
it's important to just remember that sometimes the people who were first to do it are the first to fail at it, right? Think of all of the things that have happened in this world that somebody tried first and failed at. And it's, there's the thought process, the early bird gets the worm, right? But the second mouse gets the cheese. Yeah. I like that scenario better because watch somebody else go and do it and watch them take it, right? AI is a fantastic example of
Mhm.
this. And
Absolutely.
there are, over the last 2 years, there have been an inordinate number of companies who have sunk their teeth into AI. They've bitten on a hook, line, and sinker, and they are abandoning those initiatives because they jumped in too far too fast. They had no idea what AI actually does, but they know that there's a hybrid. They better be the first. And so they were the first. And what happened? They got nothing out of it. And the folks that went and sat down and thought, where am I going to gain from this? What am I going to use this for? How am I going to use it? Why am I going to use it? They're the ones that are now starting their projects and saying, all right, I got my arms around this. I can learn from all of my competitors'
Yeah,
mistakes.
exactly.
We rushed into it, yeah. And now I can get it right. I can sync it up
Mhm.
with what it is I actually seek to achieve. And it won't take me 2 years to figure out if I'm bombing it because I actually have a clean set of expectations on what I want to gain. So if I start getting way too far off track, I can cut the cord much sooner.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that is so, so critical. First fails fast. Just remember those three F's right there. So, well, thank you all for your amazing questions. As always, we will go back in and answer these. And then I also do TikTok videos on each one of them. So shameless plug, if you don't follow me on TikTok, I'd love to have you over there. We have a very disruptive community when it comes to kind of truth telling, that's fun to engage with. If you have questions or feedback on this live, we always love to hear from you directly. You can reach us at Kyler@theconfluential.com or Adam@theconfluential.com. We also have info@theconfluential.com. If you'd like to see anything there, we encourage you to head over our website, try our River AI selection tool that we were talking about in the beginning of this episode. Let us know your feedback on it. It is the first of its kind as far as shortlist generation for enterprise tech that's completely unbiased. We don't sell any software, so our only goal is to make sure that you get the best fit for your organization. But we hope to see you. Do you have something else to say?
Yes, I also want to say if you value Kyler's leadership and opinions,
Oh,
also check out her Bite Size podcast. It's far more
oh,
high
thank you.
quality
Yeah.
than the contributions I make on this. Although I like to think I make some positive
Oh, yeah.
contributions. Her Bite Size podcast just tackles all kinds of great conversations and discussions and technology that I think add a lot of value to the marketplace.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, Bite Size is near and dear to my heart. We have guests on it every single week. This week, we had a professor and doctor of organizational leadership that took us through how do you actually create a talent pipeline for junior members of your organization, which can be a huge challenge in today's industry, especially in technology, with the training they're getting in the classroom, translating that into building your future leaders of your organization. So, I appreciate that reminder very much so. So you can find Bite Size on YouTube at Bite Size Tech, or you can find it anywhere you get your podcasts as well. But for now, we will see you next week. If you have topic ideas for us, always just drop them in the comments. We definitely listen to those and want to make this conversation as valuable for you as possible. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you to Adam for all of your great insight, and we will see everybody